I was very pleased. I shared the stage virtually. He was there in person earlier this year. He won. He was recognized as a champion of literacy by the Literacy Action Group here locally. And when you hear his story, you'll see this is a person who really has epitomized what it's like to become a lifelong learner and then teach others the joy of lifelong learning. Malcolm Mitchell is a native of Valdosta, Georgia. As a high school senior, he was Under Armour All-American and went on to finish in the top 10 of all-time receivers while playing at the University of Georgia, where my oldest daughter is an alumnus. Malcolm was the recipient of many, many different awards while at UGA, and particularly he was impressive in forming a number of different organizations to inspire reading, not just around the campus, but within the Athens community and beyond. Because of this, he won a number of awards and accolades. In 2015, Malcolm authored and published a children's book, The Magician's Hat, and created a youth literacy initiative called Read with Malcolm. In 2016, he developed a 501c3 organization, Share the Magic Foundation, with the sole purpose to transform children's lives through literacy. And Malcolm has gone on to sign a 3-book deal, and he is widely published. More than 65,000 young readers have been able to enjoy Malcolm's books. Now, he has won numerous accolades, 40 Under 40 awards, awards and been featured on USA Today, ESPN, CBS Evening News, CBS Sunday Morning, and a whole host of things. But his greatest championship, I think many would say, is from 2016. He was drafted by the New England Patriots. And he has a Super Bowl ring, which my son had a chance to put on. Anybody know who they beat in that Super Bowl in 2017? So we're going to forgive him on that and bring him up And so, KP, you wanted to invite Malcolm up?
Let's give a warm Rotary welcome to Malcolm Mitchell.
Well, Keith, you just had to share that. I wanted everybody in here to like me. Let me start by saying thank you. First to Stephanie Blank, who reached out to me and asked if I would be willing to come here today to speak and share my story. My beautiful fiance, Jasmine, will share with you as soon as I received your message. It was an absolute yes. Thank you for having me here. Bill, Jasmine, thank you too for making this happen. I could do a better job working on my schedule, but you two ensured that I was here on time and ready to deliver a message that was of value to everyone in this room. Keith, thank you for the wonderful introduction, even though you mentioned the part that probably most people dislike. Happy Son's Day. I have a son who will turn 2 years old on Sunday. Isn't that correct? Okay, on Sunday, Juneteenth. And the message that I hope to instill within my own son is one of hard work, commitment, and humility. So I humbly share that I am wearing a ring that has 283 diamonds to represent the score during the Super Bowl. I want to play a quick game with all of you. Please humor me in playing along. Here's how the game will work. I'll read from my sheet of paper a few stats, a few facts. It's in the form of a story, so it'll make perfect sense. And I want you to try to guess who I am talking about. Now, what will happen, in the middle of me reading, I will pause to see if anyone knows who I'm talking about. If you can figure out who I'm talking about, I'll stop. We'll move on to the next person. If not, I'll continue until we get to the end where I'll disclose exactly who I am speaking on. Can you move to the next slide for me? I can't get there we go. Okay, let's begin. We'll start from the beginning. The person who I want you to guess was born in Tuckahoe, Maryland in 1818. His life was anything but easy. He was separated from his mother before he was a year old. She was moved to a farm that was 12 miles away. He only saw her 4 or 5 times before she died. As a slave, his life was anything but easy, and he was treated poorly. Here's a quote. In the hottest summer and the coldest winter, I was kept almost naked. I had no bed. One would think growing up like this would leave a person sad and depressed, but he survived and prevailed. When he was 8, he was sent to live with another master in Baltimore. His new master's wife had no idea that she was not allowed to teach slaves the alphabet. So she did, until her husband found out, and he told her that was unacceptable. He told his wife it would forever be unfit to be a slave if one learned how to read. He'd have no value. These words inspired our individual. Let's go. Frederick Douglass. Now, you guessed a lot sooner than I wanted you to, so I have to read a little bit more off of this list. Frederick Douglass learned how to read. He started with the alphabet. Soon after that, he went around and carried a book everywhere he went, trying to get people to teach him how to read. He started playing little games with his friends. He'd say, I know more words than you know. And his buddies would say, no way. Frederick Douglass would say, I'll prove it. And they'd start sharing words. And once that took place, Frederick Douglass started to learn new words. He did the same thing with writing until he was able to write proficiently. Later on, he went to counsel 4 presidents. One person even went on record and said, there's no way this human being has ever been a slave being able to articulate his message so well. Reading reshaped his life. There's a Frederick Douglass quote that I'm sure you know. Once you can read, you're forever free. Freedom today looks a lot different than freedom, and looks a lot different than freedom back in 1818. But I've come to find out through my own journey that reading still sets you free. Free to be whoever you choose to be. Free to have confidence in your own thoughts. Free to articulate your perspective in a way that hopefully people understand. And that's why I'm here today, to share a little bit about my story, a little bit about literacy and the impact it has on the lives of individuals. I know that's something you're focused on, and hopefully this resonates with you so we can continue to impact lives through literacy. I'd love to play a quick video for you. Can we go to the next slide?
Now, Steve Hartman with the Super Bowl star who reads between the lines.
Ladies and gentlemen, your New England Patriots.
Generally speaking, Super Bowl pregame interviews aren't a great source of stimulating conversation. And yet every year, reporters gather 12 deep for this cliche fest.
Saying it's good when you come together as a team.
Fortunately, this year, there was a rookie from New England with something novel to talk about.
Good to see you again.
Novels, like Gone Girl.
What about her false diary?
Yeah.
How does the author use that in the narrative?
Well, the diary is almost a different character in the book.
I first met this voracious reader wide receiver 3 years ago. Malcolm Mitchell was in college then, playing for Georgia, when one day he ran into a woman at Barnes & Noble. She didn't know he was a famous football player and invited him to join her book club, which he did. And that's how one of the top wide receivers in the country began meeting monthly with his book club lady friends.
Oh, yeah. And then he went to the wedding.
I love that part.
He was the only man and the youngest by a generation. But Malcolm didn't care what anyone thought.
Somebody called me a nerd. It's not a word that I'm used to hearing.
Is it okay, though? Are you okay with the label?
I was proud of it.
Great.
It's like a badge of honor to me, knowing where I came from.
Malcolm confessed to me that when he started college, he could only read at about a junior high bothered him. So he started putting as much effort into his reading game as his football game.
Every free moment he had a book in his hand, until eventually he was reading them by the dozens.
Yeah, the ending was great.
And that's why, no matter what he does on Sunday, Malcolm says football will never be his proudest accomplishment.
That came natural. That's a gift. I had to work to read.
Which brings us to the latest chapter in his life story.
It was after the interview we did and I saw the reaction. You know, it kind of took on a life of its own. Good morning.
Today, the reader is a writer too.
So I wrote the book that you have in your hands today, The Magician's Hat.
The Magician's Hat is a children's book about the magic of reading.
Follow your dreams.
He has also started a kids' literacy foundation, all of which leads me to the same conclusion I had after my first meeting with Malcolm.
If we could all just follow your example, our country would be in a perfectly good place.
You don't know how much that means to me, man.
Malcolm Mitchell,
Seriously.
Super Bowl winner. Steve Hartman, on the road in Houston.
And that's the
Growing up in Valdosta, Georgia, I was no different than any other child in our community. I gravitated towards sport. For those who don't know much about Valdosta, Georgia, in 2009, we were crowned Titletown USA. It was a competition that ESPN hosted for the winningest programs in the country. This was just not based on high school football. It encompassed the New England sports arenas. It accomplished the Chicago Bulls when Michael Jordan was there, the LA Lakers with Magic Johnson and Kobe Bryant, and Valdosta, Georgia beat all of them out to be crowned Titletown USA. So you can only assume the amount of attention that's given to high school football. I was no different. I gravitated towards sport, and I didn't fully understand the importance of an education. I thought, growing up in a single-parent household in Valdosta, Georgia, if I played football, that granted me the only opportunity to escape that reality. And I was very lucky because I could run really fast and I could jump really high, and my hands are abnormally big. So I did not understand the value of reading. To be completely honest with you, school was a necessary evil. And the teacher told me I needed to get an A in class. I would respond by saying, but doesn't a C get me to the next grade level? It wasn't until I got to the University of Georgia where I had an opportunity to pause, look around, and think deeply about the choices I had made. And I realized that if I gave my brain the same amount of attention I gave my body as an athlete, it could take me to similar places. No, the journey would not be the same, but I'd be empowered to make choices that would lead me down a path that would still allow me to provide the future I wanted for my family. But it was very difficult. I struggled to read. The first book I tried to read was titled The 48 Laws of Power, written by Robert Greene. I heard 50 Cent talk about it in the interview. For those who don't know who 50 Cent is, it's Curtis Jackson, the guy with all the TV shows on Stars now. I went to the library, picked up the book, tried to read it. It took me about an hour to get off the first page, and I realized that I had an issue. Then I went to the grocery store to go grocery shopping. I came back, unpacked the bags, and I realized I had picked up the wrong items because I was reading the labels wrong. And here was the nail in the coffin to say. Captions would fly on the screen when I was watching my favorite movies, and I had to keep pausing because I couldn't read them fast enough to stay on track. The movie gets really long and boring if you keep doing that. So I decided it was important for me to become a reader. I wanted to be my best self, and my mother always told me being the best football player you can be and being the best person you can be are two different things. And you won't maximize yourself as a person until you read. So I set out to be a better reader, but I had to start from scratch. I started with the basics. I picked up picture books, which explains why I became a picture book author. And I used those books to enhance my skill set. All my football coaches told me over time that you start with the fundamentals, you build upon that, and you get better and better and better. I took that same approach to reading, and eventually I became a proficient reader. Then I realized something else. All of my friends from high school, all of my friends from middle school and elementary school missed this message. Somewhere along the line, we did not grasp the concept that reading could enhance our lives. We did not understand that reading would grant us the opportunities to ensure our mothers or our fathers didn't have to work 3 or 4 jobs just to provide, that we could read our way into a better future. I had no idea. I have friends who are spending their lives in jail because once football did not work out, they thought the only other choice was what was right in front of them. I have an older brother who wanted the same thing I wanted, who didn't understand that reading was an option that could expose you to material that takes your life on a different journey. I'm here today not because I played football or won the Super Bowl. That's probably a reason why I wouldn't be here. I'm here today because one day I decided to pick up a book and read and then share that message with kids around the world because I realized, yes, you can read your way into a better future. That is possible. That athletics or entertainment is not the only way. And all of you in here are proof of that. But in the communities that I serve and that we all want to serve, somehow that message gets lost. So I ask myself the question every day, how could I make a difference and enlighten those who need to know that there are other ways? That you have hope outside of whatever your immediate obstacles are telling you. Let's push forward. Once I became an avid reader and once I started Share the Magic Foundation, I started exposing myself to more and more statistics, trying to learn out what is really happening. What is the issue with literacy? And I realized that low literacy isn't just a problem in the state of Georgia, but it's a problem everywhere. And those who can't read cannot succeed. It's borderline impossible. I start coming across information like this. And it forced me to start thinking differently. The definition of being literate is the ability to use print and written information to function in society. So if I can't read, I can't function in society. That's what that tells me. If I can't read, I can't achieve my goals. I can't take information and use it rapidly to enhance whatever goal I'm trying to accomplish. If I can't read, I cannot succeed because I can't execute these things proficiently time and time and time again. That's an issue. So what else do we know about illiteracy? We know the ability to read is important. In school, it's really tough to go on to the next grade level if you can't read the material. No subject, even math, every subject is impacted by one's literacy rate. So to read means to excel. If you can't read, you cannot excel. We know the consequences for COVID-19 really disrupted literacy. Distance learning almost doubled the gap of achievement. This is the work that we do every day at my Share the Magic Foundation, and the consequences will be detrimental unless individuals like us decide to stand up and make a difference. Children who struggle to read often drop out of school, live in poverty, interact with the criminal justice system, and have a decrease in life expectancy. This is what changed my entire world. Once I realized the consequences and how I fell inside of every one of those statistics. I grew up in a single-parent household. We did not have books at home. I was very lucky because I could play sport, but the consequences for individuals who are living in communities that don't have access to print is this. This humbled me because a lot of my friends are in that group. A lot of my family members fell in that group. I was in that group. Maybe some of you are in that group. But along the way, you found the encouragement to try something different, and now you're here. Can we do the same for others? Research estimates that before ever entering kindergarten, cognitive scores for children of low literacy families are likely to average 60% lower than those in highest socioeconomic groups. Should money determine one's trajectory in life? Here's the cycle for low literacy. Lack of education, lack of opportunity, low income, hunger, poor health, and living conditions. The question to ask, if reading proficiently impacts the quality of life, how do we get communities of children reading to a better future? This is what I strive to do every day, and I know that's something that all of you are thinking about here at Rotary. And it's an important question, because this is the question that needs to be answered. I joined the House Study Committee for the state of Georgia, and this is the same question that we ask ourselves. How do we get kids reading? If literacy is the key to success, then how do we get more kids reading? First, I feel we have to identify part of the problem. And these statistics, to me, identify big problems. 68% of Americans, fourth graders, read below proficient levels. In middle-income neighborhoods, the ratio of books per child is 13-1. In low-income neighborhoods, the ratio is one age-appropriate book for every 300 children. Studies show children's literacy is correlated to parental literacy, with parental literacy being one of the strongest indicators of the child's likelihood of educational success. If a child's parent is not reading proficiently, they're less likely to read proficiently. 1 in 6 children who are not reading proficiently in the 3rd grade do not graduate from high school on time. More than 40 million adults in the U.S. score at or below the lowest levels of literacy. What can we do to help? Sorry about that. That's not supposed to be that way. I'll make sure it's fixed next time. In 2016, I created Share the Magic Foundation because once I learned all those statistics I just shared with you, it became apparent to me that literacy unlocks the potential of young lives. So I wanted to expose children in under-resourced communities to the power of being literate, to share my story in a way that encourages kids to try even if they struggle initially. We do that by introducing book ownership into the lives of kids. We know that kids don't have age-appropriate books at home, so we strive to give children books, and we also create platforms for educators to encourage their students. Since 2016, we've been very blessed and fortunate to impact over 300,000 students. That's nationally. We've had some international participants as well that used our programs, which is a ton of fun, being able to reach out into other countries. And what I've learned is books make the difference. I can stand at the highest point of the highest mountain and yell, read, read, read 1 million times for the rest of my life, but if kids don't have access to books, there is nothing for them to read. So making sure that they have books at home to read is very important. From my perspective and what I've learned being out in the communities, there are a few areas where we can make an impact, where we can make a difference. It first takes humbling ourselves to acknowledge the truth in all of this. How do we get here today is the question that I always ask myself, because until I acknowledge the truth of the past, it's really hard to make accurate decisions for the future. Face the brutal facts. I hear this all the time in business. When I read those self-help business books, they always say stuff like that. But it's true. I think you have to acknowledge, how do we get here today? In Atlanta, 4% of black boys are reading proficiently in public school. 4%. Line up 100 of them, 4 of them read proficiently. Up until this point, we do understand that literacy is the key to success. Doesn't matter if you play football, doesn't matter if you play basketball, doesn't matter if you're an entertainer. At some point in time, you will have to have the skill set of reading, digesting information and applying it to your life. We know that. So how do we get here today? Well, reading hasn't always been exposed to everyone. Frederick Douglass said it. And if Frederick Douglass said it, it must be true. I think we have to work to rewrite the cultural narrative associated with reading in underserved communities. Let me explain this a little bit more. When I was growing up, you didn't walk outside and see doctors and lawyers and CEOs and professionals. That's not what you see. Actually, unless you're on the football field, my mother didn't want us to go outside. So there was no correlation between education taking you much of anywhere in the environment that I grew up in. So there's an extreme cultural disconnection between the value of literacy. No one told me that if I read and exposed myself to all this information, it'll give me the skill set and the information I need to make quality decisions. And with that information, I can go down a path that was beneficial for my future. That I could read, go to college, get a quality job to ensure my mom didn't have to work so hard. That's not the message I was sent. They told me to read to pass class. And unfortunately, my challenges every day surpass the ideal of passing class as being important. I think we have to meet young readers where they are. I was just in Virginia talking at a Boys and Girls Club, and I asked a child, I said, well, you tell me, what would get you reading? And he says, if there was material that was relevant to what I deal with every day. If someone like me came in and exposed me to this ideal in a way that I could understand. Something my foundation is working on is leveraging technology to ensure that everyone is exposed to the ideal of being literate, that reading can be cool, that reading is cool. I was at a high school and kids are still picking on each other for being smart, and I find that to be quite ironic because those are the kids that end up changing the world. It's the football players who run around thinking they're smart that may need their help in the future. I've learned that lesson the hard way at times. Get out in the community. When I go around and I speak to groups, I always ask them the question, well, what is your community saying? What are they telling you? Because I can come in and I can speak and I can share this information, and maybe it works, but maybe it doesn't work. Maybe the ideas that you have are just a question, the ideas that are necessary are just a question away. Ask the community what's going on. Get out there and ask that question. If a child is not reading, don't ask me why they're not. Just ask them. And maybe they'll give you the answer you're looking for. If a teacher is struggling, ask them how or what would help them. And they'll give you the answer. I think for me, being out in the community is what gives our foundation an advantage because we are in the mix. As we say on the field, we're in the trenches. Get out in the trenches. If you really want to make a difference, ask the people who you want to help how you could help. And sometimes asking a stranger may not be enough. Here are my call to actions for you, and then we'll open it up for Q&A so you can ask me any questions you may have. My first call to action is to contact the lowest performing school in your community. If you have one in mind, I know it's the summer, but if you have one in mind, contact them and ask them the question, how could you serve them? How could I help you? Because there are schools right in our backyard that need support. And that's a great way to get out in the community as well. See if you can go in and read. See if you can provide resources. See if you can introduce them to leaders. See if you can find someone who's culturally relevant to their students that may give them that competitive advantage to get their kids reading to a better future. Volunteer your time, your social and financial resources. It's important. Time is important. As a kid growing up in these communities, money always helps. Don't get me wrong. But your time is more important. It's the love and concern that children need to feel to get them to do something. An example would be when I was trying to become a reader, the first time I attempted, it's not like it went well. I struggled. I closed the book and I gave up. And someone came along and motivated me to continue, to help me see beyond that immediate struggle. Give your time when you have it and watch the impact and difference you'll make in a child's life. Spread the word. I feel like we all know exactly what I'm saying, but only 30% of kids in Georgia are reading proficiently. So if everyone understands the value of reading, then why are we still here? 30% of fourth graders in the state of Georgia are reading proficiently. That means 70% of those kids may end up interacting with the criminal justice system. They may end up needing government assistance and having a decrease in life expectancy. Spread the word. The last one, if you have time, visit our website, readwithmalcolm.com, and you'll learn more information like I'm sharing today. And now, do we have time for our Q&A?
Time for a few questions, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's see. Here we go. Got a question over here.
Yeah, sure.
Katie, thank you.
You spoke about the importance of having adult readers,
Yes.
parents being active and being literate. Any thoughts that you may have on a call to action around adult literacy?
Yes, the most beneficial thing you can do is allow your children to see you read. Reading in front of your children makes a huge difference, and even reading aloud. It seems like such a toddler thing to do, but there's research out there that says even if a child's in middle school or high school, reading aloud enhances those intangible skills that you acquire from reading. So even if it's on your phone, you're reading a news article from the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal, take a moment and read a paragraph aloud. That's a simple way to make a huge difference immediately.
Stephanie?
Thank you so much for coming today. It's great to see you again. And two things. One, the message about kids not having books is one that really hits home.
Yes.
And I know you've got your books out there. So if we don't have little people in our lives right now, if we buy a book today, can we donate it back for you to give out?
1,000%.
Okay. I thought I knew the answer to that, but I wanted to make sure. But the second thing, I was hoping maybe you could share, because I know it impacts so many of our kids. When you and I talked before, you shared when you were in elementary school, you didn't like getting called on.
Right.
And you would sometimes act out
That's
and
right.
get in trouble. But could you talk a little bit about that and what maybe is happening to some of our kids in school, and maybe they're not really troublemakers, but there's other things at play?
It's very embarrassing. I've never heard a person be proud to have difficulties reading. If anything, we want to change that. When I was in elementary school, and predominantly middle school, I remember being in those reading classes shying away. I was fearless on the football field, but fearful in the classroom. Because, yes, you do get ridiculed. It is a struggle. No one grows up naturally learning how to read. That's not how it works. It's an acquired skill over time. And if you don't have the foundation to help you grow that skill set, then it becomes a challenge. And I know for me, I would act out to save the embarrassment of being picked or ridiculed by my friends, being that kid who he can't read or she can't read. So yes, sometimes I would not show up to class to save myself from the embarrassment. Sometimes when I was called on to read aloud, I may disrupt the classroom, so my teacher would remove me, but I could save myself the embarrassment. I would say pay attention to the signs, because sometimes they're staring right in front of you. That, to me, is my entire grade school journey, trying to hide the fact that I struggled to read. And I never wanted to be disrespectful to the teachers. I never wanted to act out or miss class, but I did not want to be embarrassed either. So I tried to hide any way possible. The easiest thing to do is ask the questions and see what the child says. If you realize there's a pattern taking place, try to address it straight on, face the brutal facts, and then move from there. I think if someone would have said, Malcolm, why are you doing that? I would have gave an answer, and hopefully the answer would have been the truth. That would have allowed something different to take place after that.
Great. Let's have one more question. Oh, there we go, Billy.
Yeah.
Have you kept up with your book club? And have you
Yeah, I
started
have.
any book clubs of your own?
I have. A lot of the women in the book club have become huge parts of my life. Some even joining the board of my foundation or on committees to help with some initiatives that we launch. I have not started a book club on my own. I have not, but I plan to. When I do it, I want to make sure that it's right. But I do plan on doing that in the future. Yeah.
Malcolm, thank you so
Yes,
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Malcolm, you are at the heart of the issue that will change this world, and we are so grateful for the hundreds of thousands of lives you have already impacted. Thank you. Thank you again, and to all of our sons and grandsons for visiting today. Next week we are off for the Juneteenth federal holiday, and then please join us again on June 27th for Senator Ossoff, and have a wonderful Father's Day. In the meantime, don't forget T-shirts and books out front. Have a great week.